I went through one of the most embarrassing moments in 2023 where I was basically behind almost 2 months in rent, and it didn't stop there. Then my car broke down, needing a new transmission, and I was like, this is not the time for that. And I remember just crying in the parking lot, waiting for the tow guy to come, and I was like, this is not happening, because I know myself didn't have any money to get my car out because I was already behind in rent. I'm about to share this story and share with you the scriptures I used that completely changed the game for me, changed my life, and I will be forever grateful for what God did. Welcome to Notes from Your Bestie. You are now in bestie environment here. We're gonna have real life conversations, be authentic, and not be ashamed of the things that we go through every day, especially as women. I went through many nights crying and being very worried when this was happening, and as I was building my business. And before you say, oh, well, you should have got a job, I'm about to share with you how God just changed my life and how everything just changed so quickly. So how we got to that point was I was having some good months, and then I was having some not so great months where it just wasn't working out. And I was working so hard and I wasn't seeing the fruits of it. I wasn't seeing it working. And let me know if you went through that, if you've tried things before and it just didn't work and you're like, how did I get here? A couple months before, I had went to Mexico because this is when the months were doing great, all that good stuff. And I had came across a video called Lack and Limitations by Dr. Joseph Murphy. And I remember I was lying down on a couch in Mexico and I decided to turn on this video, and it basically changed my whole new world. Like it opened my eyes to like a whole new conversation. I had no recollection of realizing that it was basically lack. It was a form of lack, and that there was actually a lot of power in the mind to change your way of thinking, to basically bring more prosperity to you. And this was the first video that I found where it actually intertwined the words. So I never saw the Bible as something to be helpful, to help ease my mind. Like when people at church used to tell me, oh, use the word when you're worried and stuff, I used to look at them and be like, yeah, like I believe in God and stuff, but like I didn't understand how the Bible can truly help me in a real life situation. So this was my journey about truly learning how to use the word for every situation, especially in terms of finances and prosperity, and learning to see how God sees us, what he has done for other people, where they're like great and abundant. Okay, so let's roll back to current times where I'm now behind in rent, and this goes back to that point. And so I remember I saw a job fair and immediately I saved it. So at the time, like I said, obviously I didn't have much money. And I remember dipping into like a little bit of savings. I probably had a couple $100s in there. And I basically sacrificed and used it for Uber. What was very frustrating about this job fair is it was in a place where no buses ran, and where I live, buses work really well. Like the buses didn't run, and no matter how many times I calculated it, it just didn't work. And honestly, that should have been a sign for me not to go. But my stubborn self was like, no, I need to take charge and figure this out because I am behind in rent. So I ended up paying $50 in Uber fees to go to this job fair. And kid you not, when I arrived, I looked at all the jobs. They were telling me, oh, the jobs are taken, blah, blah, blah. So then I tried applying for the jobs that were left. And so when I sat down in front of the manager, this man was telling me how I'm not qualified, with all my experience. But he kept on saying, you know what, you're not qualified because I was missing a key component. And then I remember sitting there and I was begging the manager. I was like, dude, like, I need this job. And I was begging, like I was practically begging him to give me this job, okay? And he kept on saying no and no. And so I remember when I got up from the seat, there was a back in my mind where I laughed a little. And I was like, very funny. And you're gonna understand why. And so as I was walking out of the building, like, the sliding doors, and the doors slide open, instantly I heard, who told you to go to this job fair? And I remember I looked back, like I literally looked back because it was so loud, right? Because it sounded like someone, it was actually a voice, it was God, right? At the time I didn't know that, but now I know it was God. And he was like, who told you to go to the job fair? And I was like, well, God, I'm behind in rent. And all I heard was, go back and work on your business. And so instantly I called the Uber. And then I remember there was another thought too, where it said, and you chose to spend your last little savings on there. So now you're going to have to deal with that and go pay for your Uber and go back home. Like, it literally felt like a father talking to a daughter, disciplining them. And so I was just like, okay. And so then I took the Uber. I took the Uber back home. And then I think about a couple weeks later, I ended up going to a retreat, and it was one of my friends, a good friend's retreat. And it helped me so much because she was talking about how you need to sometimes ask for what you want. And so I was getting this desire at the time to basically go and ask one of my mentors. So I had a mentor that was helping me, like I used to work with him. Maybe I'll tell that story in another day. You guys can let me know in the comments if you want to hear how I got a mentor for my business. While in that retreat, I had this little voice saying, go and ask him to help you. Right? At the time, I was thinking it was for coaching that I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it. But I was like, I can't ask him for that, God. Like, I'm not asking anyone for anything. Like, you can supply it if you want to supply it. I was too nervous to ask. And I was like, this seems like a crazy ask. And this is just a side note, is that usually when it's your intuition is most likely going to tell you to do things that doesn't seem logical. Like, who goes and asks their mentor? Like, you don't do that stuff. And so, kid you not, about a week later, so basically the mentor knew a little bit about the situation, but I never asked. Like, I would just say in general because we met every week. So obviously he would know a little bit about my life, but it was never meant to tell him in a way where I was like, you need to help me kind of thing. A couple weeks later, the mentor comes back and he's like, hey, I want to have a call with you, blah, blah, blah. So I go on his call and I was feeling defeated and I was like, I just didn't have the guts to ask him. Like, I was at this low point. And he just gets on a call and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna help you. He's like, how much is everything? I'm gonna just bring you back to where you need to be. Tell me the amount for your rent. How much is the car? And then there was other things to make things official. There was other things that I needed. And I never forget that feeling. I was just like, I didn't know what to say. I was crying. Not on the call, but after I got up, I was like, oh my gosh. Because I was like, there's no way. I knew that whole orchestration was all God. And here's why. Because he randomly just had a desire to help me. People don't do stuff like that. And I had initially, a few days before that, I had that desire to ask him, but didn't do it. And he randomly volunteered himself and was like, I'm just gonna help you. And you want to know what happened a month later? I ended up having like 5-figure months, like 2 months in a row, signing 4 or 5-figure clients. And so it felt like I got a whole reset. It was fresh. It was like a refresh. And I remember that I was so shocked about it. I didn't tell anyone about it because I was so in shock that someone was so kind to help me. I was so in shock that God never forsake me. God helped me. And during those months, I couldn't even go to church because I didn't have a car. And I was like, I'm not taking like 10,000 buses to get to church based on the location. It was in that like mode. Right? And I was so grateful. Like, I couldn't stop crying when I finally went back to church because I was like, my God, like, God just loved me so much where he inspired someone to come and help me and reset me. And then now that person is official mentor and part of the business. And they're basically there to help me any way I can. I just want to share this with you is that God will put people around you to support you, especially if it's a purpose, you're in your purpose. God will help you. God will equip you. Like, you don't have to do anything. Everything that happened, it made me realize that what does it matter if you are behind in rent or you're behind in bills and you're doing your purpose, because that means that God is behind it. And it's an opportunity for you to get close to that. Now, I'm not advocating for you guys to be going behind in rent, but I'm saying that if it's God ordained and it's meant to be, then God will help you. I thought it was crazy how initially he had told me, who told you to go for a job? And he said to go back and work on your business. Like, that was the thing he was saying. And I was like, but God, I'm behind in rent. And so I'm just telling you to share that sometimes your journey is not going to be the way that society tells you to do it. It doesn't fit into logic. Here are some of the scriptures that I use that I'm looking right now on my phone, because I actually had listened to that video and then I put it in the notes. So it was Genesis 26:2-6 and Acts, Psalms 23 1-6, and Psalms 91, and then Psalms 91 1-16. And so what I would do is just go and look for those scriptures, copy the scriptures from the Bible app, and then I put it in my notes. And every time I worried about finances, I would read it. And it would just remind you of how God has no needs and how he's the provider. I would go on walks and read the scripture. And I remember it changed the way I thought about things. I would take walks and I'll be like, wow, God owns 10,000 cattle. Like, God owns all of this. Like, he owns everything. He made everything. He created everything. He just said it and it was created. And that started to open my mind. And I really believe that all these things happened because I started using these scriptures as affirmations or confessions. And you could maybe be like, but why should I do that? Like, does it really work? It's like, wouldn't you rather be speaking life, speaking things that imparts into you, that doesn't make you worry, rather than be stuck in that mindset of worrying, thinking about your finances, like not sleeping, being stressed out? It's just so much better to just read even if you don't believe in God, you read those affirmations to give you that peace of mind. You keep on reading those affirmations until it just gives your mind rest. Because the reality is that you cannot do anything. You can't do anything. Okay? When your mind is in a place where you're worrying and frustrated, like, it's just not worth it. Not worth it. Embarrassing as this is that I decided to share with you. So it could be a reminder for you that if you're in that season right now where finances is tight, you're in a season of lack, I'm here to tell you that there's a season of increase. There's a season where God just shows up and all of a sudden he just ruffles everything and then comes in there and helps you and gets you to where you need to be. You're not alone, and just because you're going through stuff right now where you feel like you're in lack doesn't mean that it will stay like that forever. Believe. I would love to pray for you if you are in that situation where you're going through like a little bit of hardship, finances, or you feel that you are in lack. I'm there to pray for you. And remember, this is a bestie environment over here. Share your thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions and we'll go from there.